guys, it's Angelo, and many of you are probably following the world first race in the Sanctum of Domination at the moment, which is actually really thrilling because it's actually a really close race. But many of you have probably noticed that there aren't as many Shadow Priests in all of these raid compositions as you may would have thought before the Sanctum of Domination launched. Now, of course, there are a couple of reasons why guilds like Limit, Echo, Method, or even other really high rating guilds don't make use of Shadow Priest on these higher bosses like Sylvanas or Kel'Thuzad and use them more for those lower tier bosses. And in this video we're going to analyze why that is the case. So without holding you up any longer, let's go right ahead and have a look. Okay, so let's analyze and let's take it step by step, okay? So arguably one of the most important things here, maybe not the one and only thing that has reduced Shadow's potency, but absolutely vital in this equation are the nerfs that had been done to Shadow Priest before the mythic progression has started. So we got nerfed by our Devouring Plague, which was nerfed by just about 8%, as well as our Conduit Dissonant Echoes, which is still our best conduit. I believe it was nerfed about with like 5%. I'll put it up on screen now for you to see. I actually can't remember the exact number, but that doesn't matter. I'll show you on screen now. So these two nerfs in and of themselves, specifically Dissonant Echo, isn't really that big. The Devouring Plague nerf, however, that one is quite a significant one if you take it all in all. So the Devouring Plague nerf in total had only resulted in about a 3% damage nerf in total, okay? That isn't that much, and also of course especially when considering that both Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain had recently been buffed by 25%, I completely understand where this nerf came from. Right, Blizzard didn't want our single target damage, which was previously our most important and most potent niche, to be too powerful in comparison to the rest. I'm pretty sure that Blizzard knows at this point that Shadow Priest is very susceptible to stat scaling, so whenever we get a lot of stats, typically the spec will perform very good. All you really need to do is look back at basically any of the most recent expansions. You can even go back to expansions like Warlords of Draenor, where at the very end of the expansion with the class trinket and everything, Shadow Priest was insanely powerful in single target. You can look at Legion, it's basically the same thing, the same for Battle for Azeroth, and of course the same has already started basically in the Castle Nathria. Now, again, I do understand the single target nerf, and I also understand that Blizzard tried to disperse our damage a bit more onto our dots so that our cleave damage would be a bit higher, right? So both of our dots were buffed, our Devouring Plague was nerfed, so basically our single target damage was slightly reduced. Our multi-target damage in return was a little bit buffed, or at least that was the theory. So in theory, again, as I just said, that's exactly what was intended. Nerf the single target and slightly buff the cleave ability so that our damage can be more evenly and better spread. Again though, only in theory. In practice, however, things honestly, at least currently with current gear levels and of course with domination charts and everything, look a little bit different. In practice actually, other classes just do more single target damage than we do. Think about Boomkins, think about Assassination Rogues, or even honestly think about Warlocks, and other classes also do more cleave damage than we do, right? Warlocks cleave for a really good amount. Frost Mages cleave for a really high amount if the enemies are stacked closely. Right, of course, and so on and so forth. So many of these classes bring a lot of benefits that, or rather the specs, that the Shadow Priest as a spec itself isn't really bringing, right? Our single target is pretty good, but it's not the best by any means because again, classes like Rogues or even Boomkins just outperform us here, even though just slightly, they do still outperform us, right? Our cleave damage is decent again, however, classes like Warlocks or even Boomkins once more, and of course Frost Mages, outperform us. And a lot of this of course also has to do with the way that the bosses are actually designed. Okay, so many of the bosses in the Sanctum of Domination do something which Shadow Priests really don't like, and that is they force us to move very frequently, right? So let's take the second boss in the Sanctum of Domination, which is the Eye of the Jailer on Mythic difficulty, which will be on your screen now. So the Eye of the Jailer forces you to move very frequently with multiple mechanics and in multiple ways. So you can either get the laser beam and you have to actually run out, you can get the slow, which you need to move out of the raid, you can get the void zones, which you have to move out of the raid, and of course you have to dodge the big eye beam coming from the Eye of the Jailer. Now, all of these mechanics, except of course the eye beam, can either be applied to you, or they will force you to move if someone next to you will have them as well, and you kind of have to dodge them. And all of these things of course will prevent you from casting something during that time, which of course as a Shadow Priest is relatively important. The biggest problem with this of course is that it will reduce the ability for you to use the Shadow Flame Prism, and it will obviously ruin some of these Shadow Flame Prism rotations for you. As you can probably see on screen now, it kind of definitely ruins it for me, because I want to Mind Blast, but I can't because I literally have to move. And this can get kind of problematic, as well as forcing you to sometimes hold your cooldowns, even though you would have loved to just use them because they're ready, right? And of course many other bosses do this as well. For example, Painsmith Raznal, needless to say, he forces you to move very frequently. He also has a complete DPS stop whenever he goes into his transition phase, which also is incredibly annoying as a Shadow Priest. We have Soulrender Dormazane, who forces you to move from pie slice to pie slice. As well, of course, you have to move into the ads whenever you have the debuff. And of course you have bosses like Kel'Thuzad and Lady Sylvanas Windrunner, both of whom force you to move very frequently. Arguably, of course, Sylvanas forces you to move even more. And, I mean, we don't even have to discuss that. That boss fight is just not designed around having a Shadow Priest, even in the raid composition. In fact, Sylvanas is so bad for Shadow Priest that you can't even really proc your Twist of Fate off of anything apart from some unnecessary trash mobs, or ads rather, which die relatively quickly and which do not really require a Twist of Fate. This is also of course one of the most fundamental reasons why you will most likely not see a Shadow Priest on that boss fight for an extended period of time, because our toolkit as well as what we offer to the raid group just isn't really solidified on that boss fight at all. On the other hand, of course, buffs to certain specs and classes, which came kind of surprisingly but somewhat even understandable, for example that of the Hunter, those of course didn't really help the Shadow Priest much out at all, because this of course only diminishes the potency that the Shadow Priest could potentially have in a raid when other classes just perform better. That's just the way it is, they just deal more damage at the moment, at least in the scenarios in the Sanctum of Domination that are relatively relevant. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this more of a talk-like video. Again, of course, all of this is only my opinion, even though of course I base this up on facts that I know as well as information, research, and just my overall knowledge, but at the end of the day, it is only an opinion. Please just keep that in mind. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, and of course thank you all so much once more for watching. Now have a good one my friends, keep enjoying patch 9.1, and I will see you all in the next one.